Ladies and gentlemen, hey, hi, how you doing? Welcome back to the channel. Thank you so much for stopping by. We just got some very interesting details on skill-based matchmaking for the very first time ever, directly from its originator. Recently, Tom Henderson, who is a part of Insider Gaming, one of the most credible sources for insider information and just gaming intel in general, sat down with the person who wrote the algorithm, essentially is what I understand from it, for Call of Duty's matchmaking, for SBMM, and we get actual insider details on the system itself. Like I said, essentially for the first time ever, info directly from the source. So this article is now up on Insider Gaming Interview. I sat down with the developer behind Call of Duty's skill-based matchmaking, and Tom initially starts out by saying that this happened at 2025's DICE Summit. Design, Innovate, Communicate, Entertain is the actual acronym for that. But he says at this event, he sat down with Charlie Olson, a veteran software programmer who spent nearly a decade at Raven Software in 2 stints and wrote the matchmaking rating algorithm, or MMR, for Call of Duty's skill-based matchmaking system. It was an offer I couldn't refuse. So I have not read this article yet. This is going to be my first time experiencing it with you and seeing what the information is, sort of reacting to it in real time as we do go through everything here. Obviously, it's rare we see something like this surface, but whenever there's anything going on newsworthy for Call of Duty, this place is the place to be to stay up to date with everything going on in COD. So if you guys want to stay in the know, feel free to hit that subscribe button on the channel, help get us one step closer to 1 million. And if you enjoyed this video, a like rating is always seriously appreciated as well. But here is what Tom and Olson ended up going through in this conversation. Olson initially wrote the MMR algorithm for China's Call of Duty Online in 2015. If you're old subscribers here on the channel, you might have even seen me play this. We dabbled in that way back in the day, with the algorithm making its way into its first mainline entry with 2016's Infinite Warfare. So according to this system, or at least the current skill-based matchmaking system, Infinite Warfare was its first implementation. I feel like a while back there was an old, I think maybe Treyarch dev or someone from QA that said back in the day they were testing matchmaking algorithms in Black Ops 2 even. So this is saying Infinite Warfare is the first mainline entry, at least with what Charlie Olson created with this algorithm. It's a system that has been there ever since. Of course, we feel it very strongly now, with the matchmaker itself becoming more sophisticated over the years, as I was just saying. But Olson's rating algorithm remainingly essentially unchanged. So parts of the overall matchmaking algorithm have changed, but what Charlie Olson wrote here hasn't been updated all that much. Olson would move on from Raven Software in 2020, and he now co-founded a development studio that provides custom skill rating and ranking systems to games. So that's he's like an expert in skill-based matchmaking. After a handshake, a brief intro, and a joke or two, we sat down to talk about the nitty-gritty with skill-based matchmaking, how important it is for live service games. Obviously, we view it as a negative because we're competitive. Even you watching this game, if you don't feel like you're that great at Call of Duty, for instance, you're still probably above average, where a true casual who doesn't watch these videos, who isn't socially online, is in terms of the game. And that's a player base that makes up the bulk of games like Call of Duty and several others out there, and skill-based matchmaking helps keep them on the game. So from a business POV, it is important. From our POV, we want the game to be less sweaty. It's obviously a negative, but it's two contrasting points of view that are incredibly different, but it's interesting to see the compare and contrast there, and whether or not there's any solutions for players in higher skilled brackets. But one thing seems for certain: skill-based matchmaking is not going away in Call of Duty. This is something that I've said, unfortunately, for years now, and arguably any other live service game, also something I've said whenever we talk about this. It's something that's going to be very prevalent in online games for a long time. First, I wanted to address the elephant in the room when it came to Call of Duty's skill-based matchmaking white paper and its legitimacy, because as we all know, there's always a sense of doubt when a giant company tries to be transparent. So true. We looked at that skill-based matchmaking white paper, and the first thing they said is ping is king. And we just know that's not the case, right? So right away, it's like, yeah, I don't know how much of this white paper I'm buying, right? When asked, Olson told me that the white paper is accurate, and he can attest to it based on his own analysis at Call of Duty and on other games. Live service games need skill-based matchmaking, and skill-based matchmaking needs MMR, he said. He continued to explain that both are needed to ensure long-term sustainability and player engagement, which ultimately is the end-all be-all goal for whoever the developer of the game is. They want players on the game for as long as possible and as consistently as possible. Just objectively, that's the business's end goal, which are both crucial components in ensuring a successful full live service game. But that doesn't mean everyone should just shut up and like skill-based matchmaking, said Olsen. On stats, Olsen explained that around half the players will be driven to stop playing without skill-based matchmaking because the sometimes you stomp, sometimes you get stomped narrative only applies to around 40% of players by skill, with 10% of the very top players doing 90% of the pub stomping. Olsen used XDefiant as an example of churn-based matchmaking and explained that although XDefiant had team balancing, people don't like being the weak link repeatedly, and high-skill players don't like carrying a team of potatoes all the time, which is pretty valid. If you're the best player, and I think this applies to COD as well, you'll oftentimes see it as if you're clearly the best player in the lobby, you'll get matched up with some lesser skilled players, and it seems like it's you and some, let's just for lack of better words, say some noobs versus a team of generally average players. And so it's like the best and the worst paired together versus average. And they think that that balances out and then it's an even match, right? That's sort of like the predetermined notion that we have just based on in-game experience without this true transparency from anything behind the scenes. When asked for a solution to skill-based matchmaking, Olsen believes that it is needed to ensure long-term sustainability for a live service game, however, thinks that its solution is transparency of where players rank with their skill. The massive problem with skill-based matchmaking, though, is that you don't know what league you're in anymore. SBMM takes away the sense of skill and mastery. There's less skill feedback, stats don't matter, KD is less of a bragging right. It's a serious design problem, really. The thing with this, which I think is interesting though, is that when you start to be transparent about skill rating, it turns pubs into competitive. If in pubs with skill-based matchmaking, if they were fully transparent, take me for example, if I'm an above average player, let's say I'm a top 1% player, well then in pubs, it's gonna tell you you're a top 1% player, and when I see there's a bunch of other top 1% players in the lobby, okay, this is now a competitive match. I wanna do better than them inherently, and it becomes just ranked play. Instead of diamond, tier divisions or platinum tier divisions, your top 1%, your top 0.1%, your top 5%, whatever. And then you're just playing the same game just with different rule sets between public matches and then ranked play, for instance, or league play, right? So there is, I think a greater conversation there. I don't know if that's fully a solution, but I do like the fact that he is arguing for transparency because for us, for the players, that's always a good thing. He continued, if you are trying to get better at the game, SBMM just rewards you with tougher opponents. Like you're basically being punished for trying to be good. You never get a game off. I'd even say that SBMM punishes players for being good. Okay, I should probably just keep reading here. That's unfair, and players are right to complain about it. I like Charlie. We share similar points of view here. Olsen thinks one solution is to reward players with more XP for being better at the game. Casuals don't need to be completely about skill like ranked, but you should be able to see something about the average skill of your lobby or opponents. Like maybe this match is a gold tier, so you get a 1.2 times multiplier. You should be able to see your MMR in the combat record. You shouldn't have to file a personal data request with Activision to get that info, like Exclusive Ace revealed a few weeks back, where you could submit that, then they'd give you all these stats, right? He went on to explain that he did pitch such a system for Call of Duty on multiple occasions, even at a meeting at Infinity Ward during 2019's Modern Warfare development. However, Olsen noted that the lack of bandwidth that studios have to consider new ideas outside of the lead studio makes such pitches an uphill battle, especially coming from a non-designer. So I tried, but it didn't catch on. The other reason I think it didn't catch on is that most designers just don't know much about how MMR works and therefore aren't comfortable using it as a component for design. Obviously, since this is sort of a standalone thing, you have the studio working on the core game, but then you have a completely separate team, for instance, in this case, Charlie, focusing on the matchmaking element of things. Similar to how Infinity Ward, if they're designing Call of Duty multiplayer on a certain year, they're also not designing the anti-cheat for it. That's Ricochet now, and that's its own entire team. So they're doing two completely separate projects that ultimately combine for one at the end, but they're building and working separately. Whether that's for better or for worse, I think that's sort of up for interpretation, but nonetheless, that's just the reality. I asked Olsen to explain SBMM in a for dummies explanation, to which he explained that SBMM consists of 3 different systems: matchmaking, team balancing, and MMR, your skill rating. MMR is the number that the matchmaker and the team balancer uses. The MMR system takes into consideration the ratings of everyone in the match and updates your rating based on your relative performance. If you're the best person in the lobby full of good players, it's obviously going to increase a lot. If you perform badly against players that are more average, it's going to drop. In COD, Olsen said that the MMR is more volatile in the mid-range, which is an issue that could be addressed. He said that COD players who requested their data from Activision are likely seeing that volatility too, with their MMR bouncing around without a clear indicator as to why, which actually was a full-on thing. Ace said there was a lot of strange ups and downs, and several other players that reported their data saw similar trends. That's why Olsen believes that players should openly be able to see that for transparency and so that they can see what's going on. He noted that preventing people from seeing their MMR or making you request data from Activision leads to a lack of faith and ultimately leads to conspiracy theories that we often see flooding on the internet. Absolutely a thing. Contrary to what some players believe, you don't really have to try your hardest every match. If you go off meta, your MMR will adapt after a few bad games and matches will get easier. That's essentially reverse boosting, but in a legitimate way, because you're just trying to have fun with the game, and then because you trying to have fun leads to you not doing as well because it's so sweaty, ultimately it does become more fun because it drops down a skill level, right? The exception would be when you're playing low pop modes that attract high skill players, or during open betas when it's only the sweatiest and the most dedicated players on the game. For example, you probably shouldn't expect a game mode like Domination, a mode that attracts higher skilled players, to get much easier. Speaking of conspiracy theories, Olsen also pointed out that COD's SBMM gets mistaken for engagement optimized matchmaking, but it's really just because the MMR is highly responsive and volatile. So he's saying engagement optimized matchmaking truly isn't a thing, it's just misconstrued because we don't have the information, because there is no real transparency here. What's clear is that SBMM and COD and other live service games isn't going to go away. They are fundamental systems that keep a game alive and thriving by keeping players around, and has become even more apparent recently following Activision's hatching skill-based matchmaking get-arounds like 2-boxing, a method where players could join low skill. The issue with COD in particular seems to be transparency, and players should be rewarded for being good at the game and getting better at the game. Be that in XP bonuses, as Olsen suggested, or even going a step further and offering exclusive calling cards, emblems, and so on. Finding a solution to appease everyone when it comes to SBMM is definitely a complex issue, but one that should be talked about more at length. And that is essentially the end of this discussion. He did say he invited Charlie Olsen to be on the Insider Gaming podcast, so that may happen in the future. And of course, if we get more details on skill-based matchmaking and everything going on there, I'll absolutely be covering them. But I do agree here with, at the end of the day, the best answer, there may not be one definitive, absolute, this fixes everything, this solves it all, end all be all, right? But the best possible answer ultimately is transparency. It's giving us more information. As Tom alluded to, big companies giving, transparent answers, though, oftentimes is not super trusted. There's a lot of skepticism there, rightfully so, especially with Call of Duty, where it seems like they're always trying to, sneak something in there. But that being said, that is the most objective and detailed and informed take on skill-based matchmaking that we've seen to date. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. Very curious to get y'all's opinions on this. If you enjoyed the video though, like rating on your way out would be really appreciated. And if you're new here, you want to guarantee that every single day you're in the know for everything going on in COD, this is the place to be. So feel free to hit that subscribe button and turn on those post notifications. But once again, thank you so much for tuning in. And until next time, take it easy, have an awesome rest of your day, and I'll catch you later. Peace out.